Hey everybody, it's Alec, one fourth of the Everything or Nothing crew, back with another movie night. I know it's been a while, and I apologize. I've just been really busy lately and unable to record, but we are now officially in the month of October, and that means I'm about to start watching a lot of horror movies, like I'm sure most of y'all will. It's an exciting time. I've got my Halloween shirt on to celebrate the spooky season. And today I want to talk about a movie I just watched earlier this week called Tales from the Crypt Demon Night, released in 1995. Now, if Tales from the Crypt sounds a bit familiar to you, it may be because you've heard of the series of comic books that this property originates from. I know people mostly associate comic books with superheroes, and while that does make up the bulk of the market, comics cover just about every genre of entertainment you can think of, including horror. And the comics were originally published in the 1950s, but in addition to that, there's been a TV series on HBO and a few movies over the decades, one of which we'll be talking about here. Now, if you're not familiar with Tales from the Crypt, the stories are usually presented by this sort of undead looking figure known as the Crypt Keeper. Okay, that's enough. And in keeping with the spirit of the comics, they use him here in Demon Knight as well. He kind of sets the table for the movie, similar to the way someone like Rod Serling would introduce an episode of The Twilight Zone. The skits that he's in bookend the film and aren't a part of the actual plot, but he plays this director who is trying to shoot his own horror movie. It's all very silly and tongue-in-cheek. Like, every time he speaks, he uses these horror-related puns. I don't remember any off the top of my head, but something he would say would be like, "I've always screamed of making my own horror movie." Just dumb stuff like that. And Demon Knight is directed by Ernest Dickerson, who has 23 feature films to his name, most of which, honestly, I've never heard of. But his most famous film is actually Juice, starring Tupac Shakur. That's one that I've never seen personally, but I'm sure many would consider that to be a cult classic. So that's a pretty big one in his pocket. He's also directed another horror movie called Bones, starring Snoop Dogg, where Snoop Dogg comes back as a ghost to get revenge on his killers. I just feel like I have to see that at some point. But anyways, getting into the actual premise of the movie, the story is about our main character, Breaker, played by William Sadler, and he's being pursued by someone known only as the Collector, claiming that he stole something from him. He possesses this key that he claims would doom the entire planet if it got into the wrong hands. And that doesn't really even scratch the surface of how wild some of the ideas are here. The movie kind of plays coy for a while with who these two guys are, their backgrounds, and what their motivations are. But the movie kicks off with a chase scene that ends in a fiery explosion that no human could possibly survive, and they end up both walking away from it, which just lets you know that you are dealing with two guys who possess some sort of supernatural abilities. Eventually our main character ends up at this shady motel where he meets the rest of our cast. The Collector is played by Billy Zane, and some of you might recognize a few others here, like CCH Pounder and Dick Miller. I think most would be familiar with Thomas Hayden Church, who played Sandman in Spider-Man 3, South Texas representing. And we've also got Jada Pinkett Smith here, probably best known for starring in G.I. Jane 2. The police approach the scene of the crash to only find the Collector, who has miraculously survived the crash, and he tells them that he is chasing someone extremely dangerous. They end up finding Breaker at the motel and attempting to bring both him and the Collector in for questioning, and it's at this point that the Collector, in pretty spectacular fashion, finally reveals himself to be not a Not a very good guy. Eventually, he is forced out of the motel, at which point Breaker seals off every entry point that he can find with a liquid found in the key. That plot thread goes to a pretty crazy place that I don't want to spoil here, but essentially he is just the latest descendant in a long line of people who have been chosen by the big man himself to safeguard this key. As the collector is outside the motel, he raises up an army of demons straight from hell, and they begin to try to find their way inside. This is where I think you can make a solid comparison between this and The Evil Dead, where Bruce Campbell and his friends are trying to survive an evil presence outside their cabin. We get the same basic idea here, but in a motel. And even more similar to The Evil Dead is that each person can be corrupted by the collector and have their spirit taken over in exchange for something they really want, or at least that's what the collector wants them to believe. This leads to some fun scenes where the collector is trying to approach each person when he catches them by themselves, and he kind of like shows them a vision of their deepest desires and trying to tempt them to let him take over their soul. There's one scene I can't even show here because our friend, the drunk Uncle Willie, played by the appropriately named Dick Miller, is a horny bastard. But the demons themselves look great. When they come out of the ground, you get some awesome transformation scenes where they really show off the special effects. A lot of good practical effects here. It's one of the most memorable scenes in the movie. And when various members of the cast get possessed by the collector, their faces and mouths kind of like morph with huge jaws and sharp teeth, and it looks really cool. Their blood is also like glowing green, the same way that like the Predator is, which looks awesome. The movie also establishes this weird rule where the demons can only be defeated by destroying their eyes. That leads to this funny scene where Breaker is being attacked by a demon, and after beheading it, has to throw a rug over its head to prevent it from still being able to see him and attack him. And speaking of some more humorous scenes, the movie also has like a really good sense of humor. There are two characters who kind of play lovebirds, and at one point we get a peek in the bedroom, and they are up to some pretty freaky stuff. And there's another scene where the group is looking for ammo to defend themselves, and they find like an arsenal in the room of a friend who was just fired from the post office. So little things like that I found hilarious, and you kind of need that in a movie like this so that it's not taking itself too seriously. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I would urge y'all to check it out. It's available to stream on Peacock. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'm looking forward to putting out more, especially as we get closer to Halloween. Let me know in the comments below what your go-to horror movie is around this time of year. Make sure you order a pizza, grab some popcorn and your favorite soda, and have a great movie night.